Make it live. All right. For those who are watching the YouTube, just to let you know, we're just going to do part 2 here. So if you want to listen to part 1, it's audio only. You got to go back to the OG and listen to the podcast. So that's an inconvenience. I'm sorry that that's an inconvenience to your life. We're all praying for you to get through this situation. All right, let's start. Let's do it. Here we go. In 3, 2. Oh, you ready?
Well, I was just looking and I see that you have just your first name, and I'm like, I don't know. Do I want to have my last? It doesn't matter. It's okay. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. I don't.
3, 2, 1. We can totally do it.
Okay. They're just gonna think you're trying harder than I am.
I really am. I'm nothing if not a try hard.
That's okay. I'll be the dummy cop in this situation. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. And we're back with part 2 of episode 421 of Cinematary. In this part, we're going to be continuing our concert movies series with 1968's Monterey Pop. Directed by D.A. Pennebaker, the movie features appearances by the Mamas and the Papas, Simon and Garfunkel, Hugh Maskela, Jefferson Airplane, The Who, Otis Redding, Jimi Hendrix, and Ravi Shankar. The film documents the Monterey International Pop Festival of 1967. Monterey Pop was originally planned as an hour-long special to be aired on ABC. Production for it was handled by the Foundation, a recently formed nonprofit organization of musicians, including John Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas, and the band's producer Lou Adler. The Foundation sponsored the music festival, for which some 32 performers and acts were said to have donated their services, with proceeds from the show pledged to establish grants for upcoming artists and to generally advance pop music. Director D.A. Pennebaker was quoted in the Washington Post in 2006 as saying he had never seen a concert film before working on Monterey Pop. His strategy was to shoot the entire festival using 5 portable 16mm cameras equipped with synchronized sound recording devices that Pennebaker and his colleagues made by hand. During post-production, an article in Rolling Stone opined that the current edit of the film focused too much on John Phillips' band, the Mamas and the Papas, whose segments were curiously the only ones with, quote, practically perfect sound, while the sound quality on other artists' performance were said to be lacking. After viewing footage of his band, Simon and Garfunkel, Paul Simon was reportedly so dismayed by the quality that he was possibly going to opt out of the final film. And the sound on Jefferson Airplane's segments was described as, quote, so bad, in fact, that it will do more harm to the airplane to be heard in the film than to release a bad record. In the meantime, Pennebaker was said to be working on soundtrack issues. Rolling Stone also named significant acts who had been edited out of the film, including Al Cooper and his band, The Blues Project, The Electric Flag, Lou Rawls, Buffalo Springfield, and the Byrds. Due to the last-minute nature of the producer's request for talent releases and out of concern for proper audio quality, the Grateful Dead and Steve Miller Band reportedly refused to be filmed in the first place. Monterey Pop represented Otis Redding's last performance before his death on December 10th, 1967. And the film also was said to have depicted The Who's American debut and Jimi Hendrix's first major American concert. Rock critic Robert Christgau considers Monterey Pop the best of the 1960s concert documentaries, saying, quote, the music and its celebrants are like a wonderful secret, wonderful because even though everybody knows about it, it still delivers the thrill of discovery. Unveiled in 1967 or 1968, Pennebaker's vision of the 1967 event was instrumental in convincing potential organizers and participants that music was the healthiest way to crystallize the energy of a counterculture that by then seemed both blessedly inevitable and dangerously embattled. And the New York Times in 1968 said, it is possible that the way to a new kind of musical, using some of the talent and energy of what is still the most lively contemporary medium, may begin with just this kind of musical performance documentary. So on that note, let's talk a little bit about Monterey Pop. I had not seen this before.
Me neither.
So first time.
Yeah.
What did you think of it?
I had a lot of thoughts, but I guess my first thought was how enjoyable it was, like how easy to sit and watch and listen. Live music isn't something that like comes very naturally to me.
Mhm.
Music isn't something that comes very naturally to me. So when someone's like, "Hey, let's go see this concert," I'm like, "That's fine. I could do without it. I wouldn't mind one way or the other."
Mhm.
So it was nice to sit and watch a bunch of concerts of music that I like. I had a big like hippie dippy phase like in middle and high school. So these were artists that I was very familiar with. So it was nice
Mhm.
to see them live. I would have liked to have seen them live like when I was in that phase. Like that was the live
Sure.
music that I would have given anything to know about this, I guess. Um, when I had that phase, it probably wouldn't have been a phase if I had seen it. So I'm glad I saw it now. Also, towards the end there, it ends with Ravi Shankar's
Mhm.
um, gorgeous playing, and it was really late when I watched this, and it put me to sleep. I just
That
sort
would
of
be a nice put to sleep moment though. Like I think
yeah,
that's a good one.
yeah. I just sort of I was like, wow, like this is just like it's really easy to watch, very enjoyable, and now I'm like there's some fast playing there. It gets really people are up and dancing, really excited, but and then it just sort of it played me off, and I just sort of drifted to sleep for like a good 20 minutes. I missed the clapping, the thunderous applause. Nope,
Mhm.
couldn't wake me up.
Nice. No,
But
I mean that sounds like a great way to finish the movie, like lulled into sleep because of good music.
yeah,
I did want to talk about that scene because a lot of the sequences are filmed kind of the same. Like you get either a lot of like the band or the musician who's on stage, and like it
mhm,
kind of focuses on them and less audience, or you get like this kind of like back and forth between like musician and audience and things like that.
mhm.
And that one is strange because you don't see Ravi Shankar for like
No,
the first 3 or 4 minutes.
yeah. Oh, I love that.
You know,
That
it's just like going around the audience for the most part.
hmm it's so it's a not it's such sorry, I have a lot of words about this. But first I just wanted to say that another thought that I had when I was watching this, like as I'm watching this for the first time, and you when you were given the background before this, you had said the thrill of discovery.
Hmm.
I tried to think really hard as I'm watching this for the first time too, like what it must have been like to see these acts like um, before they got big, like to see Jimi Hendrix before he got big, to see
Hmm.
the Who before he got big, to see Janis Joplin before she is Janis Joplin when she was just the lead singer of the Big Brother and the Holding Band, like when she was just the vocalist, not
Hmm.
like what it must have been like to see these acts for the first time, like what a thrill that might have been. And I honestly couldn't comprehend it. It didn't really register for me, like because again, like I said, like live music and me, we don't really get along. But I was like, wow, I can't even imagine how. I truly can't imagine how exhilarating of a experience this must have been. Um,
Well, just like in like the performances themselves. I mean, the very famous one is Jimi Hendrix
yeah,
because most people didn't get to see Jimi Hendrix live, and so like this is a really like rare treat to kind of see him. And then it's famous because he lights his guitar on fire,
yes,
and it's kind of a funny. So that I was noticing this. It's a very funny dichotomy of how they shoot that sequence compared to a couple performances before where the Who are playing,
yeah,
and so the Who are playing, and they also just start smashing all of their stuff. And like the audience is just kind of like, yeah, they're smashing stuff. That's awesome.
yeah,
And then you have Jimi Hendrix, and he's like, spraying the kerosene on the guitar and lighting it on fire, and then just start smashing it. And like you have less of like the audience reception of it. You just like cut to this.
yes,
I think this like scared, like almost like a woman who's just kind of like, what's going on
yeah.
here? And it's a strange like, oh, okay, when Jimi
Y'all are
Hendrix
really
does it, it's
eating it up
concerning.
with the Who.
Yeah.
Y'all don't like it when I do it. That's so good. Oh, that's so good. But I have like a million thoughts running around, and I think I had a point earlier, and I'm sure I'll find it. I'm sure about Ravi Shankar. I'm sure I'll find my way back to it. But I wonder if it's not because like Jimmy's performance was like inherently more sexual, like than the Who's. Like, I mean, he was having sex with his guitar like throughout the whole thing. Also, in addition to watching Monterey Pop, because HBO Max is great, and it also had Jimmy live at Monterey, and it had Shake, Otis Redding, like so it had their 2 full sets because we don't get a whole lot of them either.
And Otis Redding's whole set is fantastic.
It's so good. I mean, he brings tears to my eyes every time. I love him. He's such a beautiful and unique sound, and one that wasn't replicated again on stage. Truly singular performance, and I didn't realize that it was the same year that he passed, like so soon. Like that's him in his prime. And you talk about discoverability. It's like here was that moment of discovery for a lot of people with Otis. And
well, also just like, talking before, like, I've listened to a bunch of Otis Redding before. So like I was familiar with both songs. Like it wasn't like I was learning new stuff, but you never like seen him. There is that difference between like listening to the recording and like watching him perform it. Cause you like when he just kind of rolls into his second song, like he's performing the hell out of it. He's making them like repeat parts. The band's kind of getting into it. Like, it's just like this. And so like that part of it, there's less of a discovery for me of going like, oh, I wasn't going, oh, who are the Mamas and the Papas, or who's Janis Joplin, that kind of stuff. But it was more like discovering, oh, this is how cool it was to see them live, because that's awesome.
There's that point. Okay. There it is about how I didn't connect, or how I couldn't. There it is. Nice. Sorry, I'm a little all over the place with this. This like just brings up a whole lot of like quick feelings and the way that it jumps through sets. I'm so sorry to be so disorganized.
Well, was that what it was like for you? Is that like you knew a lot of these musicians, but it was like this kind of, so this is what it was like to see Otis Redding live on stage, like engaging with an audience.
Yes, and really like he owns that audience. It's his to like. You're going to wait. We're going to hit this line one more time. I don't think you heard it. We're going to hit it again. I don't think you heard it. Let's hit it again. Like, look at the control I have over you guys. The control that like the real stage presence that I have. And I really also, I think I like the way it was shot, and for the Monterey Pop versus how it was shot for Shake. Did you get a chance to see Shake?
I did.
So in Shake, it's the camera's just on the stage, like on him dancing, on him singing. We see some of the audience. There are some cuts, like some random cuts to the audience where it's like this, he's clearly performing at night, and we're seeing cuts to an audience during the day where it's like, okay, it's not necessarily the same audience, so we're not getting the same sort of reaction shots. But what I like in Monterey Pop is how it was shot from behind, and it's just his silhouette. Sometimes we see flashes from the lights, like more of his perspective, but it's just his voice crooning to you. It's just his voice, like making you fall in love and making you feel that raw power and that emotion that he's singing to, like how strong, he has another song, That's How Strong My Love Is. That's how strong his love is, like as it comes out through his song. I think I like the way that that's shot better. And then here's another thing about Ravi Shankar is how we don't see him, like we just hear his music. And so it's we hear and see them exclusively through their music, and we get more of a visual. Oh, gosh, it's all going away from me. Sorry.
Yeah, well, and going back to the Ravi Shankar one, and maybe I'm reading too much into it. That I started a little kind of like eyebrow raised with that, not because he was bad or anything. Like his music was wonderful, but you just kind of like we said, for like 5 minutes or so, it's just him. Like it's him in the background. Like you hear the music, but then it's just kind of going over the sea of people, and it's a little odd to me because there's kind of like this. And I don't think the filmmakers are necessarily doing it explicitly, but there's like, you have this predominantly white audience, kind of like falling into kind of this like exotic spell almost, because again, you don't see him. You hear the music playing for the first part, like you mentioned, it gets faster and the tempo moves up. But for the first part, it's very slow moving. It's very. I mean, I can see why like you would kind of doze a little bit because it is just very like mesmerizing. But like he spends the filmmaker spend like 5 minutes of like kind of going through this crowd, and you kind of have these people and they're clearly like transfixed by it. But I don't know. Again, like that's why I say I might be reading too much into it because I'm like it kind of just to me like they're transfixed with like this this exotic thing happening, and then I think it does turn over once you actually see him and you like watch the performance happening, because then he kind of takes center stage from the audience who's just kind of there like gawking at how good he is.
Yeah, there definitely is this. It plays really well with like audience reaction shots. I really enjoy those. Like you see someone like meditating to it, you see
Yeah.
them like praying, and it's like I don't know how like authentic his prayer style is as this like white man at a concert in California is.
Yeah.
But like the experience is there, and like the awe is there. I don't know if the reverence is there, but
Yeah, like I don't know, but I'm just kind of it's more just like you just see I think I saw like maybe two Indian faces in the
yeah,
audience.
not a whole lot of
And then I think the other person of color I think was Jimi Hendrix. They show him at one point when
yeah,
he's in
a
the
little bit,
audience.
and he's
Yeah, and then after
digging
that
in
I'm just
like
like it's a lot of white people from California.
that are the yogis. I like
Mhm.
tried to think like historically, like 67, like what like cults do we have popping up that like worship these like Swanjali, or these what's the one, Wild Wild Country, like that
Oh,
cult,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like how
Well,
many of those sort of like cults are
yeah.
popping up, and like this sort of sweeping movement towards like looking
Well,
towards like
that and like
India
people
and
and like especially musicians like this obsession with that type of music. I mean, like probably the best example is like the Beatles
Beatles
going.
and Ravi Shankar had said that
Yeah,
they were the ones that like tried to really pushed him to like be on the bill.
yeah, that kind of and again, like that's not I'm not chastising the Beatles for that, but like there's like this, I guess there's like this air of like fascination with him and his music
Mm.
that like I say, it's not very like insidious in the filmmaking. It's more just like I just felt like it's a real strong choice to not show Ravi Shankar for like and the rest of the people on stage with him for like 5 minutes and just kind of like show these people like mouth agape staring at him playing. Again, I don't know. I might be overdoing it, but I'm just kind of like it was weird to me to just watch all these white Californians just be like, oh my gosh, look at him. Because you never got that with any of the other musicians. All the other performances are very, like I say, are very kind of similarly structured to a degree.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't
Um,
know.
oh, go ahead.
I don't know. I guess I don't have much else to say on that. I kind of liked being sort of enticed, um, transfixed by his music, and then like slowly put to sleep. I mean, that was my response to it. It was very
No, his stuff's
controlling.
fantastic. and
Yeah.
that and that's why I didn't get enough time to research it, but I'd be curious to like, maybe read more about his reception in the U.S. Like if this was a big first performance for him, or if he had if he was if he had like a following to a degree prior to this. I would be curious to kind of learn more about that to kind of see if maybe that's part of it. I do want to say, like in the notes, they're complaining about like poor audio quality and things like that. There are some rough performances in this one. I can see why Paul Simon was probably pissed off because the Simon and Garfunkel scene is not great. it's
It felt
it's
like a blip. I kind of
yeah, well, it's
like I
not
missed that.
great. Well,
Yeah.
like they have this like red light on them, and so they
Yeah.
like they're both just like bright red. And then it's they're singing. I forgot what song they're singing, but it's very soft.
Mm.
And then it's just like bright red Art and Paul. And I'm like, it's just a weird scene. It doesn't sound very good. It's just a very strange sequence. And then there is a lot of the mamas and the papas. I think that I think they, which I like them, but there is
Yeah.
like I think they play like 4 songs.
Yeah, they
compared-
play a lot. We see them a lot. We see them the most in the
Mhm.
audiences. Like their reaction. It was nice seeing Mama Cass like reacting to and enjoying certain acts and like really
Mhm.
being just so like, wow, these other musicians like and that kind of felt that was a nice little connection. Like it seemed like she was supportive of the acts that were following them or came
Mhm.
before them, and that was cool to see. She's just so charming, and I love her.
Yeah, she was and she's great. They have one song where she kind of is the lead singer in it, and she does and her performance is fantastic.
Yeah, she does like some crowd work with it, and like
Mhm.
tells them just like, yeah, girl, like you're so you got the stage presence, like
Mhm.
are you are love it, love to watch. But and we see them like in the beginning, like making the phone calls. I mean, they were the ones that like were trying so hard to like put it together. So I guess it like for me, it made sense to like showcase them. It was kind of their concert, right? Is that my understanding, or am I wrong?
Yeah, they did a lot of the back work to make it happen. This one was interesting compared to the one that we watched last week, Jazz on a Summer's Day, which very much is like I think Jazz was better just because it not only like gives you a really firm feeling of like what the festival atmosphere feels
Mhm.
like. Like this one does that a little bit at the beginning, but then once people start playing music, it kind of drops that. Then you kind of forget that there's a festival. You just kind of go from act to act to act to act.
Yeah.
And that one does a better job of kind of weaving the two. And also, I think it just does more. It's funny that D.A. Pennebaker says like, "Oh, I didn't watch a concert
Yeah.
documentary before doing this." I'm like, "Yeah, you probably should
Yeah.
have watched Jazz on a Summer's Day because that one does a better job of and we mentioned it in the reviews last week of people think of like the New York Times saying it's too artsy, but it does like this this fantastic job of like kind of adding this visual lyricism to the jazz music, so it's not just like you know camera on stage. Here's Louis Armstrong playing. It like does this kind of. It also plays like whatever the music they're playing. The camera and the editing kind of plays along with it. And I didn't really feel outside of the Ravi Shankar scene and what you were describing in like the Otis Redding scene. Those are the only ones that feel like really well directed. The other ones feel very like a couple
Yeah.
cameras out there and like here's the concert.
Yeah. And I don't know. Yeah, I didn't I felt I was like, come on, like give us a little something, like something more to look at. Because this is you're making this a visual experience. You're making this concert, what you listen to, you're turning it more into a visual experience, and I need some visuals to look at.
Hmm.
Um, I liked some of the like projection work behind some of the acts. That was fun.
Hmm.
That felt very DIY, and that felt very familiar. You can see that at any like local concert dive bar where someone's like manipulating a projector with like colors and pictures and stuff. So that felt very like it's like the more things change, the more they stay the same. Like um,
Yeah.
it was, this
There was
is like you go.
No, I was just gonna say there is kind of like this DIY element a little bit to all of these, where it's not like none of them feel like super professional
Mhm.
um stage sequences. Everything feels very like, we're kind of making it happen.
Yeah, it's about the music. It's
Hmm.
about yeah. So yeah, there were some performances that like I forgot about Simon and Garfunkel. I really like
It's not
Jefferson
good.
Airplane, and I didn't really like
They
what I
weren't.
saw of them. I was
I
like,
like
this
them
is
too, but they weren't very good.
yeah. I was like, this isn't very grand. Like I guess I see that now. Like my thoughts on this, I didn't even think about like the bad performances. I was just like, there's that movie, great. Like
Hmm.
I was just I was curious to watch it, and I'm so glad this gave me a good excuse and an outlet to watch it. And
No, I still liked it. I just
yeah,
it's kind of a perfect little kind of comparison to last week where it's much more like artfully focused and trying to kind of like it's going jazz is jazz, but like we need to visualize it as well. And this one
mhm.
this one feels much more like like I can see how it was originally intended to be just like an hour-long special on ABC, because I'm like, it feels like an hour-long special on ABC a lot
It
of the
was like
time.
TV.
Yeah, it feels like TV a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And so like that it doesn't make it bad, because again, like I think what elevates it is like getting to see that Otis Redding performance, getting to see that Ravi Shankar performance, getting to see Jimi Hendrix, things like
Mhm.
that. Like those are fantastic, and those are like moments that are kind of captured in time. Um, but I think everything else just really um, isn't as like formed, and they definitely don't have like the kind of visual sense that the directing team for Jazz on a Summer's Day had. And so it's interesting to kind of see that, where they were very much in the, we just want to capture this festival and the performance is there, but we're not really, not to say like we're not making a movie, but it
Yeah.
didn't feel like they're out there going like we're trying to make like a movie to present out there. We're just kind of capturing things.
Capturing this movement, this feeling. I liked the girl at the beginning. She said it was going to be, she asked, have you ever been to 11? It's going to feel like that. And the vibrations from it. It was more of an experience instead of something to watch. And then,
Yeah.
so.
Well, which is kind of disappointing, because I'm like, yeah, like that's why they should have got more into like they cut over to like people. They have like they had like the moment where they cut to all these like couples who are like all coupled up and like kissing
Yeah.
and things. You get like a short little sequence of that, or I'm trying to think of other stuff. Just kind of like like little like sequences of people all doing kind of the same things.
Yeah.
Um,
United by the sound. Like, that was really
you
nice.
get like a kind of a blip moment at the beginning, where I think it's like part of the police who are going to be there talking about how, if there's, what does he see? He's like, if there's 50,000 or 55,000 people, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah. It's
The
like,
Black Panthers are supposed to be here, things like, and so I was kind of curious, or the Hell's Angels are supposed to be here, the Black Panthers are supposed to be here, and like you get a scene where like a Hell's Angels, like a jacket's there, or so you assume a
you see
member,
them
but
just like, you just see the back of their jacket. It's like, where's some of that? Like,
yeah, you never get any of that. You're like, did they like, are they there? Like, did they show up? Like, let's capture some of that. Like, is there like anything? Because it kind of like he makes that comment. You're like, oh well, shit. Like, probably later in this, that maybe something will
is there going
happen.
to be like a real like riot? Because then you have the Who busting shit up with My Generation and like all these
Mm-hmm.
cops here. Like, do you think like what's going to happen? And
Nothing
nothing.
ever happens. Yeah, and that's
Plain.
to me, that's kind of just again, like that goes back to my point of like, it doesn't really capture the overall vibe. Pretty like you kind of want to capture the vibe of like what's going on with the festival, and I'm like, I think seeing if the Black Panthers are there, the Hell's Angels are there, or whatever, like you don't really, you see the police at the beginning, you kind of see like officers going in there, they talk to that cop very early on, but then you really don't ever see them again, and so you don't know if there was like problems. It kind of just seems like this, like by watching that, you just kind of feel like it goes off without a hitch. It's very different from like the movie we were going to talk about this week, Woodstock, where you're getting all the different facets coming in, or something like Gimme Shelter, where you're getting all the different, figuring out like the behind the scenes and ins and outs of what's going on there. This one just kind of feels like, yeah, this thing happened, all these cool musicians were there, and nothing bad happened. It was all good. We're good to go.
It's perfect. And everyone lived happily ever after.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is all done like
It's
in
a music
response
festival.
to it's a music festival. There's all these like clashing ideas and clashing musical styles and cultures clashing. There should be like, or are we just like, are we just bust them up action movie watchers that's like, do something? Like,
Yeah. We're just, well, it's
are we
just
just
like,
like so conditioned like that we need some like and then they're like, do we need an explosion? And it's like, we got an explosion. He set his guitar on fire. Is that not enough? Like,
no, that's cool. But like, it's kind of like, you don't ever have like that scene where they just like, I guess they don't do much interviewing. That's what kind of bums me out. Like, they
oh,
never have like that interview with just like the couple who's just like completely stoned out of their mind, just talking about something, or like
like
somebody, or just like that kind of, like, you never get like those like those great people on the street, like just kind of, what do you think about this festival? Oh man, this is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Like just something
I
like,
saw the music come out of the guitar and
yeah,
move
you never
through
get anything good
me.
like that. It's
Or,
very, it's
yeah,
that's why I say like I wish they went into the audience more. Like they have those moments where they're showing like couples interacting, things like that, but it's never like, go and talk to people and like get like good because like you mentioned, like the girl at the beginning is really funny because she's just like, yeah, it's gonna be like a love-in. Like, get more of
Right.
those people to talk throughout the
All
movie.
these
They would have been funny.
vibrations and stuff.
Yeah.
Like they get like some more color throughout. Like there's that girl that like her job is to wipe down all the seats. And he's like, how
Hmm.
did you get so lucky? And she's like, I'm not lucky. Like, yeah, girl, you're not. Like that job sucks, but you know, you do what you got to do to see some live music, right? If you're about this. And then
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen more of like the culture, like at the concert, like what it's like to travel to a festival like that too. Like I would have liked to have heard like how far people have traveled, like you know, like when
Yeah.
you see people in their vans, it's like, where are you coming from? Like, what's your story? How did you get here? Like, they're sharing bites of bananas and sleeping bags together. Like, you know, what is this experience like on your end? Like, if this is the concert that like spawned Woodstock, right? Like, this is Woodstock before Woodstock. Like, a lot of the same acts are in the first one, right?
I believe so. I'm not going to go on the
So,
record on that.
oh, well, I guess I will.
We're going to get fact checked, but yeah,
Yeah,
we'll go
fact
with
check
it.
me later, but it's like, you know, this is the big concert before like any other concert of this nature, of this scale, like this style of music, like we've never
Woodstock
seen.
did come after, so there you go.
Yeah, so this is the first. The Woodstock before it was Woodstock. So it's like it would have been nice to have like seen the beginnings of like that festival culture and like to hear from like the old heads like what their experience is like going into it beyond just it's like 11. Like,
Yeah, no, that's my biggest complaint with the movies. That it just doesn't really give you a good reading of like the vibe there. It kind of gives you some stuff at the beginning. You watch people, but like I said, I think it would have been nice to kind of have these talking heads as you go through it, of just kind of
mm,
like them talking to people along the way. And then you match that with the different acts, because it really does. It's kind of like they have the beginning where they're getting everything set up, and then once they start playing, I
mm,
think the Mamas and the Papas play the first song, and once you hit
first one.
that, it's pretty much just like performance, performance, performance. You know, it's very
Yeah.
like regimented after that. Um,
Yeah, I would also have liked some like a timeline because as it goes from like day to night and night to day and day to night, it's like, well, what day of the concert are we on? Because then that was another thing for me when like to watch the Who bust up their set and then Jimi Hendrix bust up his. It's like, who came first? Who did it first?
mhm.
Like, did the crowd just see like the Who bust up their stuff and then Jimmy does it the next night and it's like rip off? Like we've seen this before. Like, or did Jimmy do it first? And like nobody really was like that amped up for it and they weren't taking to it. And then to see it
Mhm.
again by the Who, it's like, oh yeah, like this is really cool now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like I would have liked the timeline too, because I don't know who
Yeah,
did.
it's you don't really get a sense of like when things are happening, which
Mhm.
is fine, you know. But you know, again, going back to the movie we talked about last week, you get a sense of like how time is passing and like who's playing when and when things are happening. And this one, yeah, you're just kind of going through almost like a checklist of like, all right, now this person plays, now this person plays, now this person
Yeah.
plays. Um, and so it's disappointing that, but at the same time, like again, like I do think it's worth watching, especially if you're into this generation of music.
Yeah.
um and that's why like we mentioned like this, you do get this sense of discovery, not because you're going to be like, who's Jefferson Airplane necessarily, but you're at least going to be like, oh, like I've listened to a lot of the Mamas and the Papas, here are them performing live, you know. Oh, I know who Jimi Hendrix is, here is him performing live, things like that. And so I think like on that level is where this one is really effective.
Agreed.
Do you have
Yes.
anything? Do you have anything else before we wrap up on Monterey Pop?
No, I guess I was glad that I watched Shake and Jimmy at Monterey just to like get a little more of a feel for it. I listened to a couple playlists that had the set list like
Mm-hmm.
in the entirety just to again try and like put myself into that mindset. And it was a fun little escape into 1967, a
Mm-hmm.
time that I look upon with nostalgia glasses, a time that I'll never get to truly experience. So it was uh good night at the movie show to escape for a little bit and to be slowly put to sleep by the smooth stylings of Ravi Shankar. So I'm
What was your favorite performance?
Otis Redding,
Mhm.
hands down. His performance of "I've Been Loving You" gives me chills every time, makes me cry every time, and I eat it up. And I remember in Twin Peaks: The Return,
Yeah.
I won't say, I don't know. Can I mean, it was like
Yeah.
5 years ago that came out, but of course, there's that big, beautiful moment for a lot of people have been waiting 25 years for, when Big Ed and Norma get together, and it's scored to that. Like, all of the
Mhm.
action unfolds to "I've Been Loving You," and when I put it together as he started singing, like, oh, that was from Twin Peaks. And I remembered bawling my eyes out watching that episode, because it was such a great moment watching Big Ed and Norma finally like get together. And
Mhm.
then, you know, and then to hear it again, I was like, oh, got chills. I was like, I'm back in that moment. I love Otis Redding. I've got so many emotions. Like, I've been loving him for so long. Like, this just, like, what a performance.
Yeah. No, I
Just love
can't
it.
argue. I can't argue with that. I think that's the best performance in the
Yeah.
not only like like song, like singing and song wise, but also just like it's the best shot. Like it's really well done.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, like I think you mentioned before, but if you would like to watch Monterey Pop, it is on HBO Max currently. So I think it's on the Criterion channel if you have that, but it's also on HBO Max for folks who aren't on there. So catch it there. But until then, that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on, yeah, you can find
On a
us on,
podcast. I'm sorry.
no, you're good. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @Cinematary, where if you'd like to go on Instagram, we have all of our stories that I did of the movies that I watched at TIFF. So there's that, or you can go to our Twitter and listen or look at the ones that Andrew saw. And then if you would like to support and on letterbox.com/Cinematary, where we post all the movies that we talked about in this episode. If you like to support the show, whether it's $1, $5, it's one time $5, it doesn't matter. Like, if you just want to support the show in any way, head over to patreon.com/Cinematary. Thank you to our patrons: Cam, Chad Newsom, Corey Willingham, Candace Sisson, Ron Hayes, Teresa Marthathi, Titus Arthur, and Tyler Chandler. Thank you so much for your patronage. Next week, we're going to be continuing our concert movie series with probably the one that we were like, yeah, we have to do this if we're going to do this series, and that is Stop Making Sense from 1984. So, and also, like I said at the beginning, if you would like to hear the kind of full TIFF diaries from Andrew Reed and I, will be doing that in part 1 of next week's episode. So that will be there as well. But until next week, thank you all for listening. We'll see you then.